This is Arcadia on the River, and we are a luxury living community. We are known for our awesome amenities that we have here, additional to our luxury style cottages. Be sure to come visit us and meet the Arcadia family. We look forward to seeing you soon. Bye guys.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of GC360, a panel of students discussing the campus climate regarding diversity at Georgia College. I'm Zaria Golston.
And I'm Ryan Bauman. This is the second installment of a discussion we started at the end of last semester. Loyal viewers of GC360 will remember that we closed last semester's newscasts with 4 student leaders discussing the campus climate. The GC360 team and the panelists wanted to continue the discussion, and we're delighted that 3 of the original 4 panelists are able to be here today. Joining us is Cedric Norris, the Director of Multicultural Affairs for the Student Government Association, Vice President of Diversity Education for the North American Interfraternity Council, and Program Coordinator of the Cultural Center. He is excited to be working on this panel to discuss issues with students that are just as passionate as he is about the diversity work here at Georgia College.
We also have Victoria Lara here with us. Victoria is the president of the Latino Student Association and serves on the Leadership Cabinet and the Student Advisory Council for the Dean of Arts and Sciences. Victoria is also involved with the Black Student Alliance as well. She believes it's up to the students that need to be a part of the conversation and make their voices be heard.
And last but not least, Cam Watts, a diversity peer educator and SGA senator, a member of the President's Student Commission on Diversity, and the chairman of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee on Georgia College's student government. He thinks there's a big diversity disparity at Georgia College, and we need to prepare our students to fix this problem. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much. Before we get started, GC360 would like to take a moment to make it clear that our panelists are speaking for themselves and not for their respective organizations. We thank them very much for being here.
We will also take questions from Facebook and Twitter. If you have questions for the panel to address, please tweet us your questions at GC360 or post them on our Facebook page, facebook.com/GC360.
We want to further discuss where our campus stands on diversity and if Georgia College is a comfortable place for all people, not only in terms of race or nationality, but gender, sexual orientation, religion, age, disability, veteran status, and other factors. So let's get started. Let's start by asking each of the panelists to assess the campus climate as it pertains to diversity. Do you all feel that Georgia College is a comfortable and welcoming place for minority students? Anybody who would like to start?
I'll start. So I typically don't fit the bill of a minority student myself. And so with that, I don't necessarily have the personal perspective on what it would be like to be a minority student on campus. However, I do have a lot of friends and classmates who are minority students on campus. And so some of the comments that I've heard from them when I kind of discuss this issue with them is that a lot of times it can be a fantastic campus, and it's very nice to be in a liberal arts school where we kind of get to discuss different perspectives and different topics and really take an interdisciplinary approach on things. However, a lot of times students don't necessarily feel comfortable because there's not a whole lot of people like them on campus. Some statistics, about 84% of our student population is white, leaving only 16% for minority students. And that's nowhere near what the state of Georgia is demographically, and especially not in Baldwin County where we're hosted. So that can make it uncomfortable for a lot of students coming into our campus.
Thank you very much, Cam. Do y'all have any thoughts on the topic?
I do think that coming here, as a person of color that students are often sold that this is a diverse institution. And they are they are introduced to that idea or that way of thinking through programs such as the Glimpse program, where it is a mainly minority-based type introduction to Georgia College, where you get to see other minority students who are prominent on campus, and you're really not privy to the actual reality of what Georgia College's demographics look like. And so I think that frustrates students. I think a lot of times students experience things in the classroom. I think students experience things amongst their peers, and they don't feel that they are knowledgeable of those safe spaces where they can go to talk about issues that they experience or issues that they have on this campus with people who look like them, who also can relate to the experiences that they've had. And so I think sometimes that creates a lot of tension and a lot of misplacement amongst students who are minorities, and that's not just in race, but that's also in sexuality. Students who have disabilities and things like that.
So, sorry, just a quick follow-up. The Glimpse program, is that what
Yes.
you mentioned? I apologize, I've never actually heard of it, but do you feel that maybe through this program, maybe they need to do a better job of portraying the reality of the actual statistics?
Yes.
So that you think maybe you felt a little misled?
Yes, well, I didn't come through the program, but throughout my course of work here at Georgia College, I often hear complaints of students who have come after me, who came through the Glimpse program, where they came for a weekend to visit Georgia College, and they were shown, they were privy to the most prominent minority students on this campus, and they were able to see how we are successful on this campus. They are able to they are able to talk to us about our experiences on this campus. But they, just as they were pushed into that environment of talking to us, they were not privy or shown the true reality. They weren't shown the 84%, like Cam said. They only saw the 16%, and we know that if you only see the 16% of 100%, then you really aren't getting the full package.
Thank you, Cedric. Victoria, any thoughts on the
just
the
adding a little bit to what he was talking about, the Glimpse program, I think too with that is that there is a priority to kind of showcase the minority students in the Glimpse program. So that is part of why they don't really get to see the whole picture. And same with like student ambassadors and everything, they try to make it a very diverse group, which is great. But like he said, they don't get that flip side of like, well, by the way, this is kind of the other side of things. So I think like with the campus climate, it's not necessarily an unwelcome climate, but it's more one that's kind of indifferent. And we kind of talked about it a little bit before, that the problems with diversity aren't affecting them. So it's not that they don't care, but it's just that if it's not affecting you, you don't really think about it as much. And I think that that's where a lot of the frustration for minority students is coming from, that the university is making this huge push on using diversity as a point of the school, but they're not doing a whole lot to really support those organizations like the BSA, LSA, and Pride to like continue fostering that growth.
It's a lot more talk than actual action.
Yeah, and that's kind of what a lot of the students are feeling, and that's part of the campus climate, that it's not unwelcome, but we're not seeing as much support for all that it's being talked about.
Okay. I just have like a follow-up question. So how do you feel like maybe organizations could garner that support, or like what can they do to like get the ball like further rolling?
Well, we just had a conversation about this last night because we met with President Dorman's Chief Diversity Officer, Veronica Womack, and we also met with the Dean of Students, Dr. Andy Luter. And so that was a conversation that we were having about how can we foster this community between faculty and staff and students. And so I think, and something that I told the faculty and staff, something that I told Dr. Womack and Dr. Luter was, we wish that the faculty would do a better job at communicating with the students. We don't know the role that the university plays, thus not having a fluid bridge of communication. So the faculty needs to do better in communicating with the students as far as expectations, as far as standards, as far as what they would like to see, and how can the faculty assist the students in that. And the students need to do a better job at fostering a community internally to where they can execute all of those ideas and programs that they have. And once you have that relationship established between the faculty and staff and the students, then I think you would see a more robust population of minorities on this campus. Or you would have those people who are cooped up in their rooms coming out wanting to participate and be more involved.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's like a two-sided thing. There needs to be a lot more transparency just in overall communication. If we're having all of these committees and all of these goals and plans, there needs to be some actionable items to it of, okay, if this is what we're planning on doing, then how are we going to measure that growth? And how are we going to be able to have tangible ways to see whether it's making an impact or whether we need to try something different? And I think that's what the students need to work on as well. Is that students need to take responsibility and go, like if you're having frustrations, go find the resources, because the school does offer a lot of resources, and I think that that's being largely untapped. There's still some work that the administration and the faculty can do, like Cedric was saying, like being more transparent, making sure that we're kind of in the loop with those kinds of things, but students are the ones that are going to be making the change, and they need to be the ones invested in making that happen as well.
Yeah, and can I jump off that as well? I think you brought up a really good point, Laura, is that we have a lot of resources available. A lot can be done through Student Government Association. We have lots of different processes to provide funding for different organizations, for different events that are going on. But there's also a lot of administrative funds that can be tapped into as well as marketing options. So I think having a better form of communication between different multicultural organizations on campus, between Student Government Association and between the administration, and really triangulating that communication would be really effective.
Wanted to follow up a bit. Y'all both mentioned maybe resources going untapped. Could you know of maybe, or could you speak on a few more of the resources that you know of?
Well, speaking from personal experience as like the president of Latino Student Association, honestly, there's not a whole lot of Latino students involved with it. And we're really making a big push to try to work, like Cam was saying, like with other organizations and to kind of build that support system with other student groups. Because I think that's like going to be a big foundation to get things working when we do move on to the next step and work with administration. So even just like getting involved with those organizations and supporting other organizations like BSA and Pride, that is a big start. Dr. Womack is a huge resource. She's there to handle all kinds of situations with diversity, and being the chief diversity officer, suggestions from the students would go directly through her to Dr. Dorman and kind of trickle down that way. So having her as a resource to talk to, even just to make suggestions for ideas, is a big point too.
And I also think that the Culture Center and the Hub and all of those places have been put there so that students can have like that safe space. So, yeah. And
you felt the Hub has been impactful and effective in that manner?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it has been a great way where students have kind of been able to establish what a headquarters is for students who do not fit the bill of what it means to be the majority. And I think it also offers a space too where you can have the majority of students here who are white, and you can have the minority students come into this place and they can have discussions and conversations and really transcend past those uncomfortable stages of just race and sexuality and things like that. You can really sit down and get a true understanding of people from all of these different groups.
The Hub has definitely served as like a second home, I think.
Yes,
like for all those organizations, not only to work together, but it's just a fun place where you can go relax and do these different things. And especially like having point people like Jennifer Graham, Melissa Carrier, who's over like the Women's Center, LGBTQ, and Stacy, who's over the Culture Center, having people specifically suited for those roles and being available like at all times to kind of handle different situations and handle different kinds of educational events and things is a huge piece. Because student organizations do a lot, but at the same time, the Culture Center and the other Hub workers work as like a middle ground between like the administration and the students as well.
Yeah.
I had a like one quick question, just for like all of you, I guess. So I'm familiar with the hub, and I know like from my experience, it's been a great resource as well. But a lot of students like aren't familiar with the hub. They don't know what like the letters stand for and like how great of a resource it is. I'm thinking maybe that's like a PR issue, like maybe pumping some more like ads out about that. Like, do you all have any opinions about like the advertising for the building or the resource as of yet?
Well, I think the first great thing about the hub and putting it where it is because of its location. So it's like every student that is a freshman definitely walks past the hub every day.
Yes.
From the dorms. And I think that the geographical location of that was an influential piece in letting them know that that's a place that is for those things. I do think that we could do a better job of a social media presence, because a lot of students of the majority do not know that that's a place. But I also think that on a more ambassador side of things, that needs to be incorporated into those tours, so that those potential students know as they're coming here to tour Georgia College that this is a place for people. This is a place for people this is a place for people to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And so it's called the Honoring Uniting Building. So it's a place where we can bridge those gaps. And I mean, like yesterday we were sitting on the front porch, and I saw at least 3 or 4 campus tours, and neither one of them stopped.
Yeah.
That's problematic. Yeah.
Cam, I'm sorry,
No,
Victoria.
go
I
ahead.
just had a quick question. Cam, do you, since you're involved with SGA, I don't know if they have anything to do with the student ambassadors specifically, but is there any way to like, I think so. Is there any way like we could get the hub incorporated into the tours, or is there already talks about that?
Absolutely. So I'm actually a student ambassador as well.
Sorry, my bad.
First, student government and student ambassadors are not associated. They're two separate organizations. But for the ambassadors program, they know about it. I know that they have changed the tour script. So as they're teaching new tour guides, that is implemented in the new tour. The issue is that for tour guides who have been giving tours for years now, it's hard for them to break their mold and change. Now, I don't think that's a legitimate excuse, but I'm just explaining kind of the realities of the situation. So they know about it, and they are, trying to create that change. I think they can do a better job enforcing that change, but that's kind of the rundown on what's going on there.
I think a key point with publicity too is that on the hub banners it shows like the Culture Center, LGBTQ Center, and the Women's Center, and it doesn't like outwardly talk about the organizations involved, even though that's kind of like the headquarters. So finding a way to kind of bridge that and like show that these two go hand in hand, I think would also help a lot, so that students not only know that they have like different centers that they can go for their different needs, but that there's also specific student organizations that they can go to as well, because I don't know if that's talked about as much in conjunction with the hub.
Yeah. Another important thing that I think would really help out in that kind of area is the hub does some incredible programming. I just went to one a couple days ago with Mahogany Bauer, who gave a TED Talk, and she runs her own nonprofit in Savannah, Georgia. Phenomenal speaker, had a really, really enjoyable time, and I learned a lot. But there was not many people there. Well, there was probably around 20 to 30 people there, but that could have easily been an event for lots more students, and I think a lot of more students would be interested in it. But I think to, one, get students more interested in the hub and get more familiar and comfortable with it, that the hub could start partnering with different colleges here. So like with the College of Business, host a discussion. Diversity Week was not too long ago, and we brought in a speaker, Bianca Jackson, to talk about women in technology. So maybe hosting some of those events at the hub would draw in a different crowd of students that could then become more familiar with that space, and hopefully find that it is just as comfortable for majority students as well as minority students.
I think that would be pretty effective.
Yeah.
All right.
Very
We
nice.
have our next question.
Yes. Yeah, so how do y'all feel? We're going to shift the discussion a bit if y'all are awesome.
Absolutely.
How can we better eliminate the disconnect with the local community? What is the campus doing to maybe get more involved with that local community?
I think that is a very, very prominent issue. As someone who knows a lot of Milledgeville natives, as someone who kind of uses those services, especially downtown, a lot of people of color, particularly, have this type of resentment towards the university, and part of that is because a lot of people who live here and who have come here over the years remember a time where they applied to Georgia College and they couldn't get in because of the color of their skin. And so, that resentment has held out through generations. And I think because of the bubble that Georgia College has kind of formulated, a lot of times people of color outside of that bubble only see Georgia College as like the school where the white kids go, and so that's how it's kind of become associated, as if Georgia College just kind of came in and taken over this place that we call Milledgeville. And so I think definitely some ties of like getting out there and letting the community know that we're grateful that we sit in the heart of what they call home. Because I think a lot of times we forget that like we are invading people's spaces, and we only get to call this home for 4 years, but some people have been living here for a lifetime, and that sometimes we may be in the way, of their day to day. So.
I think that's something that admissions needs to kind of take into account as well. I think like when you go look at like the commencement when you first come to Georgia College as a freshman and they give you all those statistics, a lot of the students are coming from the same areas like Metro Atlanta, Johns Creek, that kind of area. And so I think that admissions needs to be doing more to focus on our local community and all of the people that are here already that are wanting to come and like take part in the institution. Like Cedric was saying, just getting more involved, getting more invested, saying like we're here for you as well. Because Baldwin County is also one of like the poorest counties, and I think like some of the statistics they gave at the event yesterday was that they have very low like ACT scores and things like that. So we could very easily step in and help foster that growth for the Baldwin County community as well. So we just need to be getting in there.
Because Baldwin County itself has their average standardized test scores sit at about 19. Yeah, on the ACT.
Yeah. So I actually have 3 things. It's a big issue, and I'll go fast so we don't have a lot of time. One, early college program is supposed to be a really big recruiter for our school for local community members.
And Bridge Scholars.
Yeah. But with the early college program, a lot of early college students can't get into Georgia College because they have low ACT and SAT scores. But we don't offer them the sufficient ACT and SAT prep while they're going through high school to get them into the college. So it's counterproductive in a lot of ways. So I think that's a huge area we can improve on. Second, I think that we need to incorporate more service learning within courses. My GC2Y, we actually went and worked in the community garden for a day, and we also volunteered at the local farmers market. So we were actually out in the community, interacting with local Milledgeville residents, and I learned a ton about the community that we're living in. So I think that needs to be another thing. And lastly, something that's currently being worked on is, we mentioned the Glimpse program earlier, but SGA is working on something called the Glimpse Outreach Program now, which is kind of an extension where instead of bringing high school students to campus, we're sending college students to high schools, especially focusing on Baldwin County right now to try and alleviate some of that disparity between community members coming to school here.
That's really great.
Y'all all bring up some really excellent points. We want to shift the conversation now, maybe allow you guys to
ask each other some questions.
Ask each other some questions that you may have for the other panelists. We're going to start with Mr. Cam, if you want to start us off.
Question.
Oh, God.
Man. What's the bigger issue? Recruiting more diverse students to come to Georgia College or fixing the campus climate first?
Campus.
You go first.
Campus climate. I definitely think the campus climate, because I think like the school makes a lot of efforts with recruiting, and
We
we're
saw
very
those numbers
successful.
last night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like there was a lot of people that get accepted and they just don't come because of their environment, or we have a lot of students that transfer because of the environment. Because on the whole, our education isn't bad here. What's wrong is the climate itself. So I think if we can focus in on that, focus in on supporting the students that we already have here now, and keeping them here in the retention rates, helping the organizations that are involved with those students grow more so that they're able to be a better resource for those students, so it's not all just on the administration, is the first thing that needs to happen. So we're passionate about this.
And we have to address the two extremes. And so the first extreme is white privilege. The second extreme is white guilt. And so you have the people who have white privilege who are not knowledgeable of that privilege, and the institution does not do enough to address that privilege, or students aren't called out on it, or students aren't held accountable in that area. And so something that I explained to the students last night, talking to them, part of that is fostering a strong sense of knowledge and community within those organizations such as BSA, LSA, NAACP, et cetera, so that we can become knowledgeable on how to address those issues when you're put into that situation in the classroom and by a professor. But the other part of it too is having leaders on this campus who are professionals, who have those degrees, to be able to address and correct those students. Because we know that we do not have that much of a diverse faculty and staff. So you have students who are white, who have white professionals that they look up to. And so those professionals need to be trained on how to address privilege, on how to correct the student when they're saying something that's inappropriate, if they're around. Another thing is white guilt. And so you have people who want to be our allies and who are willing to support and help us, but they do it out of pity. And so they need to be able to know, there's a saying that we have in the hub, every day as part of the majority, you have to gain your ally card. And so that's something you have to work every day, and by the end of the day, you should have your ally card. And so that's by not inserting yourself in situations that you don't know enough about, giving those people who are feeling oppressed or who are feeling misplaced the voice to speak what they're feeling, to voice their frustrations, but also just being that person that supports them and says, hey, I have your back. What can I do to help you?
I think too with that though, like what you're saying about like majority students being able to make that connection, but I think minority students also need to be able to make that connection as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like not feel so frustrated that you're kind of excluding yourself and excluding
yourself, yeah.
like cutting off that conversation, because sometimes if you come off too strong about your frustrations, then you're kind of putting people off, and then that's not bringing anyone in either. So having that strong support, making sure that you're not just focusing on like, oh, well, I'm very angry about this one thing, but looking at the bigger picture and being inclusive and looking at, okay, well, I'm feeling this way. Who else can I help that's also feeling this way? Because I know BSA and LSA do a lot with that, but if you think about it as well, like a lot of religious minorities and like even Asian students, they don't even have an organization. So how like though there is still work to be done in our position, what can we do for other people as well, like who don't have that?
And wanted to follow up. How do y'all define white privilege?
You got that.
You want me to do it?
I know.
White privilege, the definition of white privilege, or what I know it to be, is someone who is white who has a privilege based off the color of their skin, sometimes based off their socioeconomic status, based off the advantages that they have over minority, over people who are part of underrepresented groups. And that is just, and I think sometimes, a lot of people they're not knowledgeable of that because you don't know what you don't know. But I think that is what it is. You have privilege over, you are looked at as the standard. And so a lot of times you don't have to think about the skin that you wear. You don't have to think about all of those components of your physical, but when you're walking into a room, because you are deemed as a standard.
Yeah, and one thing is like, I just want to say, like,
Cam, I hate
Yes.
to cut you
No,
off,
I
but
understand.
we're gonna give all of you a quick break and a quick 2-minute break, and then we'll be right back to finish the discussion.
no problem.
At the Grove, and we are located directly across the street from the Georgia College dorms, which is within walking distance from the campus. We offer 2 and 3 bedroom apartments here. We have 2 resort style pools, a 24-hour fitness center. So just take a short stroll across the street from Georgia College and come check us out.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Listen now, can you hear the bluebirds? Oh, look up now, can you feel the sun? Whoa, 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 whoa. Can you feel the sun?
And we're back.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We're going to pick right back up from where we left off, talking to Mr. Cam right here. We were discussing white privilege, if you're just now joining us.
Right. And so what I wanted to mention or clarify kind of with white privilege, as a white man myself with white privilege, I'll admit, is not something that you can choose. It's something you're born with. You don't really have control over whether you have it or you don't. But what you do have control over is what you do with it. And so as someone with white privilege or any type of privilege, it should be in your best interest and in everybody's best interest to use that privilege to help others who don't have it. And so that's what I've been trying to do here at Georgia College. That's what I try and encourage my friends to do. And that's going to create the inclusive environment that we want, that we need to have a better learning environment, to make better graduates, to have more fun, and just to have an overall better time that's suitable for everyone. So that's just what I wanted to add on to the end of that.
And the first step in doing that, sorry, Victoria, and the first step in doing that too, and in addressing that white privilege, because Cam said you should be able to use it constructively, and some people ask, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, the first step is actively listening, not just listening, but actively listening, and listening to understand, listening to not respond, but to understand and truly truly get where someone's coming from, and how, and taking off your lens and putting on their lens and understanding how and why they may feel the way that they feel.
So essentially empathy.
Yes, the
Empathy.
key word is empathy there.
Absolutely.
I think another thing too, we're talking a lot about like white privilege just because that's kind of the majority on our campus, but I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, Cam, that there is different like levels of privilege. So like intersectionality essentially is like the idea that there are places where things are different, but there are sometimes places where there overlap. So let's say that you are a minority student, but let's say you come from like a high socioeconomic place, then you have privilege in some regard, even though if you don't in another regard. So that's another thing to consider too, is that we're talking about white privilege specifically, but it's not just that. So using it constructively in all kinds of situations that you're in, like being able to analyze yourself.
I had a quick question, just bringing up like the topic of intersectionality. What are some programs you all know have been held on campus to promote that? Because I know like that's something that's really important. Are there any events you all know of, or like any opportunities for that to like shine on campus?
Well, I can speak on for the diversity peer educators, and so a lot of what we've been doing over the year is going into classrooms and leading facilitations, and the kind of activities that we're doing highlight the intersectionality of everybody, even the white students in the classes, because everybody is, you know, diverse in their own ways, because we're all different people, we're all unique. And so with that activity, we recognize how we're different, how we're the same, who struggles with what, who benefits from what. And so it's really a good appreciation of everybody's differences and how everybody's a form of intersectionality themselves too.
I know, like, speaking specifically with LSA, we've done a lot of events where we try to showcase a lot of overlap in the culture. So most Latino students, like myself included, aren't from like a Latino country, but our Latino heritage is very strong, like in us. Like, I was born and raised American, but we do a lot of events to try to overlap with like the American culture as well, to show that how they're similar. We did a Mardi Gras event with BSA last year, showing that it's from multiple cultures. Like Carnaval in Brazil is the same as Mardi Gras. In case you didn't know. And we just recently we're trying to do more like cultural presentations like that. We recently had one for Black History Month about Afro-Latinos, which is a big topic. They're a very marginalized community from like the Black community and the Latino community they're not enough of either one. And so they're kind of like in this limbo. So we try to do a lot of things that do have that intersectional aspect. Like we're working with Pride to do one about like trans culture in Latin America and how that might look different than it does here or in like other countries. So just kind of like incorporating, same as diversity peer educators, with that educational piece in the different events.
Okay, that sounds great. Do you all have any more questions for one another, or anything you would like to put on the record?
I asked my question.
All right. Okay. Well, if there are no more questions, then I guess that's the end of our panel. We had a great conversation here, and we would like to thank all of the panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here with us today. We hope this panel has allowed all of our viewers to hear and understand new perspectives. GC360 will post this panel on our website, gc360news.com, and on all of our social media platforms. And remember to tune in to our replay times at noon, 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. For GC360, I'm Zaria Golston.
And I'm Ryan Bauman. See you next week.
You guys did a great job. Oh. Thank you so much for being here. The conversation got really good.
Really good.
Yeah. Y'all looked a lot more comfortable this time, and I really loved it.
Yeah.
Y'all had a lot to say. It's great.
Went off for a little bit. That's okay.
Yeah.
I was